Hello, everyone. Thank you, everybody who took time today to join our AMA session with our beloved partner and one of the most progressive and fast-growing DeFi projects is Flux project. So, and welcome, Dan. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today.
It's also just a great opportunity for us as well. So let me introduce yourself then. So Daniel is the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of Flux uh, in general. How are you doing today then?
I'm doing great. Look forward to answering some questions and getting some info out to your community.
Repeat, please. I guess I got some connection problems. Did you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure. It's just great.
Okay, yeah, I look forward to chatting today and talking to your community. I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, great. So let's begin then. So first of all, can you explain in more detail what is like Flux ecosystem in general is? What is Flux cryptocurrency and how it works? And
Absolutely. If you're not familiar with Flux, Flux is a decentralized compute network. Essentially, if I'm trying to explain it to people, it's AWS on the blockchain. So, I mean, if you were to go out to deploy today on AWS, you would, you would go and you would pay for services, and you'd be paying Amazon for those services in their colo data centers. With Flux, it works a little bit different because you're actually going direct to the decentralized systems administrators, the node operators that are running all over the world. Flux, the asset, is part of the Flux ecosystem. It powers everything from decentralized two-factor authentication and Zell ID to the node structure, the whole nine yards. So, Flux is very versatile. It's very utility based. It's originally a fork of Bitcoin, so we bring over all the good parts of Bitcoin, but we added our deterministic node layer on top of that so that we could continue to keep building out. So, we've been around for we're going close to 5 years. Well, 4.5 years, going on 5 years. I've the Flux is the only project that I work on, and the entire team is the same way. We focus on Flux and Flux only. So it's kind of unique in the crypto space because we're more of a tech company that happens to have a blockchain rather than a blockchain company that is building around that. So that's a little bit about Flux.
oh, okay, thank you. It's quite like very informative, like starting over, and actually, like what is almost everybody are interested in. So as long as you're a DeFi project and you're a decentralized project, you always have to like. Uh, Keep the interest from your community. And so, can you elaborate about how is Fluxcoin is allocated and distributed, and how your like exact users and supporters could take benefit from it in the first place?
Absolutely. Flux is a very unique project in the sense that it looks there's nothing in the space that's doing quite what we're doing. So we're a proof of work project. So our consensus mechanism, our layer one, is proof of work. Also have our node structure. So 50% of the block rewards go to our miners, and 50% of our block reward goes to our node operators. Currently, we have close to 13,000 nodes running across the world. Our miners continue to mine. They're really excited about the upcoming ETH fork as a lot of that hash power will start to move over to Flux as the next logical choice. So we take great pride in our community. We have a very educated community because the individuals that run our nodes or mine on our network or even participate in hodling or staking on Project Titan, they have to understand the fundamental concepts of cryptocurrency. They have to understand fundamental concepts of blockchain. So I often tell everybody there's no shill win moon group, and in the Flux community, we're all about long-term planning. It looks a lot like a tech company, and we have a lot of shareholders and stakeholders who are involved with the project. So yeah, we want to be one of the best DeFi projects out there, but we also want to really focus on Web3 and bringing the next version of the internet as well. I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, okay. So as you mentioned, like your community is like well known about the DeFi, about the Web3, and in about the crypto industry in general. And of course, there must be an experienced team behind the project. So can you tell us some more about the founders, about your team? Why did you, why and how did you get into the DeFi world?
Yeah, so one of my biggest prides of the project is the team that surrounds the project, because the co-founders and the leadership group that builds around this is hands down the best team I've ever worked with. Myself, today is Clementa, who is a particle physicist, or was a particle physicist by trade. Parker Honeyman, who was an operations guy. I come from a chief information officer background in the medical field. We have Volter Silva, who's one of our lead devs. He's very influential in building out different aspects of Flux. If you're running a Flux node, you can thank Volter. We also have Jeremy Anderson, who is our CTO on the Flux project as well. One of the originators of Ravencoin, who came over to the Flux project and has been here for the better part of 3 years. And then we have the rest of our leadership team. So we have about 50, give or take, about 56 developers who are working either full-time, part-time, or ad hoc. So there's 24/7, 365. There's somebody constantly developing on the project. We move at the speed of crypto, which you have to be very quick and you have to iterate very quick. We're a very agile environment, so we've brought a lot of the concepts of the business world into crypto, which is, again, kind of unique in the blockchain space, because the blockchain tech is awesome, but a lot of the times you get refugees from the legacy world that come over and they're not necessarily managing it effectively. And I think our team really manages the project effectively. We listen to our community. They're our biggest developers because they really give us input and help drive us. They're also our biggest support feature. They love to tell us when we're doing well. They like to tell us when we need to work on particular items. So we use that kind of as a litmus test, a gauge to really check where we're at as a project. So we're super blessed to have the team that we have. And if I didn't say your name, guys, I love you. And we're really looking forward to developing into the next 5, 10, 25, 30 years. I might not be here in 30 years, but we'll hand it off to the next group.
Yeah. Actually, it's quite like numerous and experienced team behind the projects, and of course, I agree that a lot of your solutions are quite unique on the market. And but actually, how could you explain with more detail, like why your project is focused on DeFi and Web3? Was it your idea and co-founders' idea, or was it like? Community and marketing issues. So how did you get there where you now, actually?
So in 2018, Flux originally started life as a project called Zell, which is really just essentially a fork of Zell Cash or of Zcash, which is a fork of Bitcoin. So we were a fork of a fork at the beginning because we really didn't know what we wanted to do. So as the co-founders came together and we said, what is the biggest pressing issues out there today? And we looked at it, and at that particular point in time, there was a lot of censorship going on. People were being removed from different platforms. Amazon AWS had kicked off several, what they called questionable, which you could argue and say they absolutely weren't. And we were concerned because as the big tech companies continued to grow and not only reach into our everyday lives, where we live, where we commute to, who we visit, what we buy, and now on top of that, our electronic medical records integrated to that. They know everything about you. So that concerned us, and we figured there has to be a better way. There has to be a way to put the internet back into the hands of people instead of these large tech conglomerates, and that's how Flux was born. We knew that DeFi wasn't a buzzword. Web3 wasn't a buzzword when we launched our decentralized computational network. We knew something would come along sooner or later, and it did, and that was the term Web3 that was coined. And really, honestly, when you talk about Web3, people get confused because they're like, what is Web3? Is Web3 the metaverse? Is Web3 DeFi? Is Web3 NFTs? It's not. Web3 is the infrastructure that powers all of those things and gives them the ability to be decentralized. So today, you can deploy an application on top of Flux. It will launch between 3 and 5 different locations all over the world. And it's completely decentralized. There's always points where we have maybe some challenges around decentralization. So we're always working to iterate to the next version of what Flux and Flux OS is. But really, it's what made Bitcoin so successful was the fact that it was a community driving the adoption phase, and that's exactly what Flux has done. We didn't spend any money on marketing for the better part of 3 years. We built in silence. We didn't want, we wanted organic growth, organic development. We didn't want hype and buzz. We just recently last year, actually this year, signed our first marketing contract to start actually pressing out and starting to get into the not just the blockchain ecosystem, but the standard tech stacks as well. So I believe you'll see. We've got lots of blockchain projects that are using Flux, but I think you're going to start to see lots of standard tech stacks using Flux as well.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree that there was like a social request for the transparent markets, for the transparent companies, and here DeFi and the Web3 are I think the best solution for such issues. But when we go to a DeFi, we face also some barriers like security, for example, security of the whole platform. And recently many large platforms have been compromised and caused a lot of losses for its users. So, how the current Flux ecosystem is safe from different hackers' attack, and how secure some smart contract would be, and can you elaborate about it?
Yeah, and I think we're learning a very valuable and important lesson here recently with some of the breaches. Is that crypto moves very quickly, and sometimes speed and the ability to get to the next version is security takes a back seat. And we need to flip that around. We need to put security first and speed second. So I I honestly believe that as we continue to keep developing out the ecosystem, we are always looking at security first. And even on our parallel assets, we went directly to the chains and deployed directly, so we didn't use a wrapped asset. If you use a wrapped asset, you're using a third party that's going to basically build that wrapped asset and also audit the code behind it. Well, we've seen that not be so successful in these different areas. And I think we're even so early in the space and this disruptive technology that not even the people that audit these codes really understand what they're doing. So we have to make sure that we go slow in terms of making sure that what we're putting out into production is appropriate and tested. But we also want to move quickly. And to do that, you have to be very agile. And that's exactly what we've built as an organization. We've also we've also put fail safes in place to make sure that if not if when challenges present themselves, that we can address them proactively. So I think a lot of these projects, again, are the refugees from Web 2 that are coming to Web 3 and DeFi, and they're bringing the same habits that they utilized in Web 2, where they had massive security teams and massive production teams, and they could do exactly what they wanted to do. And in this case, that technology hasn't been built out, and especially the people to support that technology stack hasn't been built out yet. So I would say, to answer your question, we take security as number one. We always look at it. We always make sure that we're very proactive, not reactive to situations, and we'll continue to grow. But with that being said, every single person on this needs to understand that this is iterative technology, and there can always be situations where you have code issues or vulnerabilities. So you have to invest appropriately You have to, I mean, I've seen tweets from people who lost their entire life savings with Celsius. That should never happen. We need to be good stewards to the people that we're working with in community, and then we need to make sure that we educate them on how to invest appropriately. So, although it has been a very expensive lesson for many of us over the past, several months, I think we're starting to become a more mature ecosystem as overall, and I think Flux falls right into that because we've taken the steps very early on to make sure security was number one.
Oh yeah, you're actually right, and I think as well that the trust and the transparency of DeFi projects is one of the crucial one of the crucial things we should pay attention about, and of course, it's very crucial for crypto industry where the trust is the most valuable asset, And I also noticed that you mentioned about your Flex parallel assets. So can you elaborate about it a bit? So how does it work? So why did you set up these parallel assets? And which goal are you aiming with this?
Well, I would say the biggest goal in blockchain is interchain operability. So, Satoshi Nakamoto, when he was developing out the Bitcoin infrastructure, had mentioned that if you don't like what Bitcoin is doing or the way that it's going, then you fork the project and you create another project with what you believe are the values of that project. So he understood very early on there would be altcoins, there would be something more than just Bitcoin. So the ability to start tying these chains together so that they can communicate effectively is the holy grail, and that's what Flux is really setting out to do, is to be able to bring multiple blockchains together in one and be able to work in different ecosystems but still tie back together. So Flux's parallel assets were designed specifically to be able to participate in different ecosystems. So we have Flux Binance Smart Chain, Flux Ethereum, Flux KDA, Flux Tron, Flux Avalanche just recently released as well, Flux Solana, and we recently announced as well Flux Ergo will be joining them as well. So why is that important? That's important because a Flux holder or somebody that is working in Flux, the native chain, can now go and participate in all these different ecosystems. So you simply go through our decentralized bridge in Zelcore, and you can move to Flux Solana, and you can participate in this Solana ecosystem. If you want to move from Binance Flux Binance Smart Chain into Flux Solana, you can do that as well. So it gives us the ability to have access to projects that are doing unique things. And I would say the recent addition of Ergo is very unique because they're a proof of work project. So now you have two proof of work projects that basically can traverse both ecosystems. We'll have Flux Ergo that will be running on the Ergo infrastructure, and you can also come back to the Flux main chain, which means Ergo will be on Zelcore. You'll have Ergo or Flux Ergo in their decentralized DEX, and it really starts to build out these ecosystems. We've done the same with Cadena, we've done the same with Solana, and so on and so forth. So the answer to your question is this: if you really get down to brass tacks and say, what does Flux look to fix? We look to ensure that we have interchain operability across the board, and that gives us the ability to build not only DeFi and Web3, but technologies that have not even been created yet.
Oh yeah, sure. Of course, for every asset, it's important to be secure and be available of them, most of the platforms. But one more very important issue is the regulations in different countries. So as we know, many projects were closed in many countries due to failure to use the correct regulation and to get specific permits. So in order to go the more and more global, so how do you think dealing with such issues or and which problems you already faced maybe? So how it works in Flux?
Well, I think we've got a lot of unique challenges that are coming up. I always kid around with the guys and say that what is today won't be tomorrow in crypto. I think the biggest thing we're looking at now is regulatory. Especially in the United States, some regulatory guidelines and compliance things. Obviously, some of the challenges around the security of DeFi and making sure that we're building and iterating a safe and secure DeFi as well. And because Flux is a global project, we do have global challenges as well. So we have to traverse not only what's happening in the United States, but also in the EU and other parts, Asia. And really, part of that is to build a strong community representation. So we cannot have our eyes on every single part of the project all the time, but our community does that for us. So, we know well ahead of many other people that there could be a particular challenge in a particular area, because our community members, we have, I want to say it's 30 plus ambassadors across all across the all across the world. So really, it's about being proactive and not reactive to what's happening in the space, and that means you have to be plugged in 24/7, 365. So those eyes watching the project are always our community, and we're always grateful for that.
Yeah, actually, you're right. You got the great advantage of your project, which is your community members who could help you with a lot of issues. And that is why I wanted to ask, do you, it is really crucial to enlarge your community for the DeFi project like continuously? And can you tell us more details about your nearest future marketing plans, your global strategy? Because like a lot of users care about like immediate benefits, and what could you offer for your like long invest users on the long term?
Well, I would say the majority of the folks that are already in Flux are in for the long term because they have, I affectionately call it falling down the rabbit hole. They fell down the Flux rabbit hole and they started to realize the value of the ecosystem and how broad it really is. So I would say from a marketing and PR standpoint, we're going to look at more the standard tech stack. So instead of really competing with anybody in the blockchain space to say, hey, we're first, we're biggest, we're the baddest, we're the fastest, whatever. We're not real interested in that. What we are interested in is helping blockchain grow organically and getting in front of new users every day. We're very lucky because we have a couple pieces that come into play. One is the decentralized compute network, which obviously brings new projects to the space every day. The other was the fact that one of our other products, Zelcore, which is our non-custodial platform, which I call the browser for blockchain, also has pretty much every major exchange integrated into it. It also has quick swap exchanges as you know, and other areas. So we are attracting people from other projects who vicariously find Flux by going in and using one of our products. So our marketing focus over the next year is brand awareness. So when people talk about Web3, we want the very first thing to come out of their mouth is, what about that Flux thing? So that we're building. We have just recently hired our chief marketing officer, and we have a great marketing and PR team. Every single one of you guys is amazing if you're listening. And they are really organically building this, but we're also working with conventional marketing companies as well to place us in the purview of large Web2 legacy-based companies that are looking to expand into Web3. So, I'm not a maximalist. I don't believe that, it's Web3 or nothing. I believe that there'll be a kind of a symbiotic relationship between Web2 and Web3 as they grow. Kind of how it worked with on-prem when people used to run all their servers locally. And then along comes this guy and he starts talking about cloud. And they're like, well, what is the cloud? Where is the cloud? And then you had to explain it. And people were very, very ginger going into the adoption of the cloud compute. And now it's just, it's almost second nature. Web 1, which is the on-prem, Web 2, which is, something like Amazon Web Services or Google. And then now you have Web3, and Web3 comes in, Flux comes in, and they augment it as well. So you'll have on-premise servers, you'll have Web2 based cloud servers, and you'll have Web3, which basically can augment each other. So I think you'll see companies start to develop on Web3 because it makes sense to them in a couple different ways. One, decentralization. So if you have a project that is decentralization at its heart, it needs to be on Flux. Redundancy. So if you have a product that is, deployed completely on AWS and AWS goes down, that's a problem. So, Flux, you can run Web 2 and you can run Web 3 as well to have redundancy. And then I think you'll see, new developers start to gravitate toward Web 3 because it's the next logical iteration of the internet.
Yeah, actually, and you mentioned that a lot of like the biggest part of your supporters of your community are long-term holders. So, how exactly they could store their like assets? So, can you tell us more about your wallets, your domestic wallets? Yeah, Zelcore. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes.
So yeah. Can you share some details about this project of your ecosystem?
Yeah, so let's back up 2 seconds because one of the community members sent me a little message and said, I need to highlight this. Yesterday, there was a fire at Google and a large part of their infrastructure went down. And historically, why would that happen? If there's a fire at one place and a large portion of Google goes down, that means they're highly centralized. So with Flux, that redundancy, if you lose a node, so let's say you're globally just spawned on 5 different instances. If you lose one particular area, that maybe that data center goes down or somebody's server goes offline, Flux will automatically spawn another node to make sure that it compensates for that. And because it's spawned randomly anywhere across the world, the odds of it being down at any one particular point in time are so finite you can't even calculate it. Am I saying that we will have 100% uptime? I'm saying that we have had 100% uptime to this point, but that doesn't mean there won't be challenges in the future as well as we grow. So I think that needs to be highlighted. You need to get to that. So and then into your next question, yes, you can store your asset on Zelcore. You can, there's many different platforms, exchanges that support the asset itself. Everything from Binance to KuCoin to Binance US and all the different major platforms do support Flux. If you want to hold it long term, Zelcore is a great place to hold it. There are other wallets available that can hold it as well. You can stake on our Titan nodes. You can do that directly out of Zelcore. So if you have 50 Flux, you can stake it for a reasonable return that then gets deployed into a on-chain node that basically helps to build out the infrastructure around Flux. So we call it, proof of useful staking, because essentially staking today, if you stake something, there's no real value to the network. It's just locking up the asset. So it's a monetary a means. Where with Flux, what Flux has done is figured out a way that you're basically staking it into a node that's providing compute resources back to the network. So even our people that are staking, our stakers out there, they are actively helping the network grow by just simply locking up 50 Flux into Project Titan and deploying. So there's lots of different ways, ways to earn Flux. You can run a node, you can stake on Titan, you can do DeFi trading across all of our different platforms for arbitrage opportunities. I would say this, I always tell people, if you can't make more Flux by participating in our ecosystem, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Like you got a lot of ways and various options for your not only stakers but the whole community to earn with your project. And if we go back a little bit about the different business models, from Web 2, from the like traditional world. So, could you tell more about the specific business models or that your project is interested in helping? So, in other words, what kind of partners suits you best in the first place?
Well, that's a loaded question because there's a lot of them. So, I mean, I think a logical first move is obviously to work with blockchain-based projects. So we have, Cadena's nodes running, Kasama, Polkadot. Haven has their Volt on there as well, and their website. We have websites that are deployed. So I would say, obviously, we're blockchain by birth, so working with blockchain-based projects is always important to us as well. But I think what you're starting to see is people deploy not only infrastructure but business models on Flux. So we have a lot of people that are actually starting their businesses up, whether they're running nodes, or we have a rent a dev program where you can basically rent a dev to help you develop on the platform, which we'll talk more about in the next several weeks. So overall, I would say that we're really looking toward the gaming sector. We're looking, deploy front end, back ends to gaming sectors. We recently added geolocations, which allow us to deploy locally to particular areas. So someone says, well, if you're decentralized, why do you need geolocations? Well, if you have a project that wants to be regulatory compliant, you need to have geolocations for them to be able to deploy locally. The other plus to geolocations is the fact, if I have a game server, I want low latency, low ping time, high availability, and I need to be able to deploy that into particular areas. So if Dan is sitting in the United States and, the game server's deployed in the EU, that doesn't work very well. So you need to be able to really isolate your areas where you can deploy as well. And that's one of the creature comforts of Web 2 that we brought to Web 3. So the long story, or the long answer to your question is whether it's supply chain management or EMR, electronic medical records, or a database, or whatever it is, gaming sector, Flux has the ability to provide infrastructure for every single one of those standard tech stacks. And I would say, I'd even take it a step further and say, as we launch our persistent storage model, we will be able to do anything that Amazon AWS can do. Hands down, we'll have all the components in place to do that. So that really opens us up to anyone. And if you've ever deployed an application on Flux, you'll know that if I go to AWS and I spec out a specific server, I could pay $100 or more a month for a server. Well, let's hypothetically say an organization has to deploy 15 servers. Well, that gets fairly costly. On Flux, that same server is going to cost you about $4. And people say, well, how can you give away the compute resources so cheap? Because the individuals who are running the network, the individuals who are providing the node network, were already incentivized and paid in Flux. So the compute resources can be given back almost like a Linux distribution model style, where it's very cheap, so that we can keep the adoption level to continue to keep growing.
Yeah, definitely. Like a lot of DeFi projects and DeFi networks are more secure in many ways and more stable, and that is why I wanted to ask. Like, as long the Web3 projects, the different DeFi projects are becoming the more and more popular. Do you have any goals or aims to popularize the knowledge about your project for non-crypto investors, for people who are not quite like familiar with the industry? Do you want to get them as well? What do you think about this issue?
So I often use this analogy. My wife goes to the ATM machine to take money out. She drives up, she puts her card in, she puts her PIN code in, she takes the cash, she takes her card back, and she leaves, and she's on her way. She doesn't need to understand all the intricacies that have happened behind the scenes to allow her to take that money out. So there's a whole entire infrastructure that runs to make sure that it's accounted for, and so on and so forth. That is our banking system. We need to work on building the UI, UX, the user experience of DeFi to the point where the normal person can use DeFi, but not necessarily know that they are using DeFi. They're just gaining the benefits of a decentralized finance. And we're far from that at this point. As we've seen the past several months, and what has been deployed is, and I put my air quotes up, DeFi. It's not DeFi. Celsius, Voyager, a lot of these different products, Terra Luna, these pieces were centralized infrastructure disguising themselves as DeFi. And no knock on any one of those particular projects. This is just factual. If your infrastructure runs on AWS or Microsoft or something of that nature, then you are a centralized project. You are not your CeFi. You're not DeFi. So I would say that our biggest thing from the Flux standpoint is we want to make sure that we build the infrastructure out. So as the people are building the front ends that make that seamless for their end users, we can drop that on top of Flux, and now all of a sudden you have true decentralization. And I'll give you an example. One of our projects that we work with is Cadix, and they were one of the very first truly decentralized exchanges. Right now, if Amazon went down, Uniswap would go down, PancakeSwap would go down, because the majority of it's running on AWS and centralized servers. Cadix, on the other hand, utilizes Flux nodes for their infrastructure, so they're actually decentralized by birth. And you'll see a lot more of these projects start to come online. We've got DocuShield, which is another one. We've got Tempe, which is a web browser. A lot of these deploy on Cadena or other ecosystems, and then Flux supports them. So you can deploy on any layer one you want, and then you can run on Flux on top of that. And then that really gets you back to really being a true decentralized DeFi project.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that like a lot of projects which are telling about themselves that they are DeFi, but actually they are DeFi only on paper, and they
Yep.
are truly CeFi. So that is really an issue and really a problem. And we appreciate that your Flux data system is truly DeFi, which is powered by actual users, actual supporters, and this is really great. I have like one more short question for you. So in many countries, like English is a really great and high barrier to familiarize with the project. So do you have any marketing strategy aim at development many different communities in different countries where like English is not even the second most popular language?
Yeah, and I would say, this is a unique opportunity for us to expand into other communities, and we're doing that with our ambassador program. Our chief marketing officer has worked very a ton with our ambassadors to do interpret different important pieces of the project. Zelcore itself, I don't even know how many languages. It's 50 plus, I think, languages are supported in Zelcore. It's crazy. So, everything takes time, but I want to get it to the point where, just like you kind of alluded to, that it's not, we're not agnostic to one particular language, which is English. We want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable using it, whatever language you use. And I think we're getting better at that. The translations for Zelcore are going well. The translations for Flux are going well. Our ambassador teams, 28 plus, are working on their local points. I mean, if you go on Twitter, you can see the majority of our tweets that we do are all translated into multiple languages. I think we're one of the few projects that you'll see really constantly engaged. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now, and I believe we will keep pushing that forward because we are a global project, so we have to take that into consideration.
Yeah. Then thank you for like such informative and various answers for our questions. And in the very end, so can you share us with your own opinion about the future of DeFi, about the Web3 projects? Maybe already any insights from the industry. So what do you think about the future development of such industry and section?
I am a firm believer. I mean, there's many people that are saying we're in a bear market right now. That bear market is for the assets, really only the asset prices. We're in a full bull market in development, and we're seeing it in every single area. And as people continue to keep building it out, I am very bullish on DeFi, Web3, as they develop the concepts out and get more than just minimal viable projects. They get fully developed ecosystems. So I think in a couple of years, DeFi will be now, I wouldn't say it's the norm, but it is more. The adoption level will be great, and I think you'll see, especially legacy-based finance, start to turn their attention to it as well. So the J.P. Morgans of the world, who are already saying, "Yeah, this is something we have to look at." I think that's a good sign. And as long as we can continue to be good stewards in our community and communities and build out, not be tribalistic and say my bag's the best bag, but actually look at the betterment of blockchain overall, I think that that's going to be when we win. And so, in the end, I'm very bullish about blockchain overall. I'm very bullish about where we're going, and I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be like just development and just going to be like more popular and more interesting for like for normal regular people. So and I absolutely agree with your like opinion, and thank you for joining us today. Then so maybe the last question about the question itself. Which one you like the most, so we could like reward the person who asked it.
I love the question about where you see the future, and not just because it's the last question, but I think it's the one that needs to be most comprehensive. Is where you see it in the future. I think that's important, and I also want to thank you. SimpleSwap has been a great partner to us. They added Flux very early on. If you haven't checked out their platform, go check it out, and it's a very nice, easy, simple way to get Flux. And yeah, I thank you for the time today and letting me come here and talk to not only your community, but our community as well.
Yeah, of course, we're going to do it like in the nearest future, I hope. So thank you for joining us. For all who are here in this room today, I'm strongly encouraged to support Flux ecosystem, to participate, to hold Flux, to start running like dApps and wherever it suits you. And so, of course, don't forget to exchange Flux with our SimpleSwap exchange with no upper limits and no registration needed. Thank you, Dan. Hope we're going to do more such AMA sessions, and feel free to ask and us to join your community.
Thank you very much and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. See ya.